Islam. Some people said it was reserved for the Prophet's wife, and then we had this huge debate. And then you had other people to say, you know, it's so difficult to talk to women who cover their faces, and we had all sorts of this debate going on. And actually, as a British Muslim woman, my initial reaction was that what somebody chooses to wear is actually a matter for them. It is about choice. There is no compulsion, I was told, in Islam. And women are free to choose to wear what they wish to wear. And if we are to condemn countries where the hijab is forced or the niqab is forced upon women, then surely we cannot be a country where we would actually start saying it is not right for women, or we force women not to wear the hijab and the niqab. Because in Britain, I felt that the argument about what women should or shouldn't wear, we had as feminists many, many years ago, and we won that debate when we stopped telling women that their skirts were too short. And I felt it was pretty unusual why in 2008 we were telling women that their veils were too long. And I think it's important that we have a very clear understanding of what the challenges are for British Muslims. There is a myth out there. There is huge misunderstanding. There is very little appetite for honest debate. And it is very difficult to be heard, I think, if the way that you are going to argue your position is to say what Islam says. I think it's very important to look at the principles of Islam and how easily they actually tally with what I see as values and principles of being British. And to clearly make those arguments, I think, from a British Muslim perspective. Let me give you two specific examples where I've actually come across this. We had the war in Iraq. We had a lot of people who opposed the war in Iraq. Many people opposed the war in Iraq because they felt that it was a war against Islam. I didn't. Anybody who knew anything about Saddam Hussein and the way that he ran his country knew that it was very secular in its approach. Islam was not a large part of the Iraq state that Saddam Hussein ran. But as a lawyer, I had very clear reservations about the legality of what we were to do. I think it's important that those arguments are put very clearly. Because if you stand up and say, if an individual stands up and says, I am against the war in Iraq because this is a war on Islam, you therefore are accepting the premise that there is a clash of civilizations going on. And therefore I think the extreme view on both sides, i.e. the view of the small group of people in Afghanistan who think that they are at war against the West, and the small group of people in the West who have a certain neoconservative view of life where they feel they are at war with Islam, then we are actually signing up to those extreme ideals. And I think we should be prepared to be able to siphon those off and break them into individual arguments. Let me give you another example which I've come across in recent times. People feel that because of what happened in 7/7, that somehow there should have been, and there was, a reaffirmation of loyalty to Britain. That somehow British Muslims had to stand up and say, I am loyal to Britain. Again, my argument has been very clear. There are many, many people, certainly here, who are from the Indian and Pakistani subcontinent originally, whose parents, grandparents served in the British Army. Both my grandfather, my father's father, and my mother's father, my Nanaji and my Dadaji served in the British Army. And I say very clearly that British Muslims from all around the world have been giving their loyalty to Britain long before actually many of our parents even hit these shores. And therefore, this is actually not about having to say we have to come along and reaffirm our loyalty. And that is actually supported by the fact that if you look at the Gallup World Poll, that clearly said that British Muslims feel more loyalty towards Britain than actually the general public. That actually people who are outwardly religious or are religious in what they wear have no correlation to extremism. There is no connection between religiosity and extremism. And therefore, I think it is very important that for the factual information that forms the basis of many of these arguments needs to be put out in a non-sensational way. I just want to end on a very, very personal note. we talked today about the role of Muslim women. I'm one of 5 girls. I'm the second of 5 girls. We don't have any brothers. And there have been enormous challenges, I think, both internal and external, from the Muslim community and the non-Muslim community about my role in Britain. There have been some extremely challenging times. For example, when my father felt that it was appropriate for women to go on to university, when my elder sister many, many years ago first went to university, when my mother many, many years ago learnt how to drive. And more recently, when in 2004-2005, I stood as a parliamentary candidate. Internally, the challenges have been that people came to see my father and said, maybe this is better told in Urdu, although after Rubab's Urdu, my Urdu is probably not worth saying. But English, I was born and raised here, so Urdu is probably my second language.